Hello out there and good morning traders. It is April 18th, 2024, and welcome to the Apteros Daily Market Insight. So let's do a recap from yesterday and take a look at what's going on for today. So talking about what was basically discussed in the DMI from yesterday, we were generally bullish off of this line in the sand, with scenario 1 being a hold up above it, scenario 2 being a breakdown from it. We did talk a little bit about the nuance around this particular neutral reference, saying that if we held below it, it was a little bit more of a bearish reference. If we held above it, it was going to be a little bit more of a bullish reference. So early in the session, it started to look like we were getting the semblance of a little bit more of a bullish session, right? We were holding up above this zone, had some opportunities to get on board with scenario 1 and possibly extend up into here. None of these inflections ended up going anywhere, and it ended up fizzling out and coming right back into here. With that move back inside of this area here, we were a little bit more bearish from this upper neutral area, right? Not a big deal. We were coming into our main line in the sand, looking at scenario 1 still, getting some really nice inflections from our line in the sand, pushes up and just fizzles out once again. So really, in terms of like areas for scenario 1 based on our DMI, just two zones really, up here and down here, and it fizzles out, breaks down, and now we're fully into scenario 2. The pullbacks are shallow here, so really nothing for us to do rhythmically for us to get involved with scenario 2 until we start coming back up into these areas here where we get two opportunities to be short into scenario 2. So main opportunity, scenario 1, scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 2, and that was pretty much it. So those are kind of the pullbacks, the inflection zones. We talk about this all the time. Sometimes with a really good line in the sand, which is what we had yesterday, the breakdowns can lead to pretty aggressive movement, and that's what we ended up seeing here. So there is something to study here. It is something that NADRA students do study, breakdowns of good line in the sand areas and kind of scalping along with that immediate momentum until we, hit into destinations, which we made our main destination here from down below, coming back up and inflecting back up and from there, and then getting back into our line in the sand where scenario 2 is tested and ended up getting a nice move of MFV down into the close, pretty much into the end of the session for the day. And then, of course, the market opened, came back up to test that area, and now we currently sit in this area here. All right, so let's take a look at what we're going on today. Okay, so officially today is in kind of a nebulous spot. Generally, we are more bearish right now in this market in terms of bias and confluence, but our rhythm and trade locations aren't all that great. So we're out in the middle of a risk-reward landscape where we're kind of looking for a decision to be made in this market for continuation to the downside, which would be something like this, right? Continuation down into here, and then a break, down below into this main target area. Or a possible continuation to the upside, which would be kind of like holding in this zone here, and then a move up into here, and then a move up into here, and then a possible stretch target back up into our bear line in the sand. But our real main target for the intraday would be this neutral reference here. So one of the things to notice about what's going on here in the DMI for today is that we have a lot of neutrality in this zone here. What that essentially means is we're not seeing clear trade narrative and clear trade context in terms of locations. We have a general bias. We have a general understanding of what's going on in this area in terms of bearish and bullish ideas. But the risk-reward landscape isn't the best down here. Now, with intraday tools that we use as NADRA traders, we can easily make tiebreakers. We can be a little bit more short-term in our intraday trade expectations and operate in a scenario like this. If you don't have really good intraday framework tools to help you in tiebreakers and situations like this, it's best to kind of be a little bit more hands-off until we see the market make a clear move out of this middle space here and possibly look for continuation trades around these neutral areas. So in other words, something like this would be a good trade plan. Something like this would be a good trade plan, right? In the middle here, really not much to do. Now, if you have a good intraday landscape, you have a good intraday framework, you could make a tie-breaking type of assessment where you could make a move out from the central area here to get to these first neutral targets. So officially, we don't have any firm scenarios for today. What I'm offering you here essentially is the analysis around this location and how it may evolve during the session. This central area is a little bit more like a pivot for us in terms of bullishness and bearishness. And we're kind of waiting to see how the acceptance picture changes out of this zone here to get a feel for whether or not we're in a pullback on higher time frames or we're in a continuation of some faster trending to the downside. Okay, so the general scenario, risk reward, and things like that right now aren't that clear down here, and it's not the best trade locations for a good line in the sand or a good ES read. Now, as I said, we have a general idea of the scenarios and we have neutral references down here. So if you wanted to be a little bit more short term and a little bit more freewheeling, you could use the acceptance picture around these neutral references while we are generally bearish in this market. But if this market starts to move to the upside and starts to really start claiming neutral areas, we start to get a little bit more bullish in the short term with pullback scenarios coming back up into this main bear zone. All right, so I know that today was a little bit more complicated. That was really just because I was describing the overall landscape of the context, but officially, there's no scenario 1, 2, anything like that. What we're really looking at here is bullishness or bearishness based out of this central area here. And that's kind of the overall look for today's context in DMI. So trade well out there, mind your risk, and follow your process, and we'll see you all tomorrow.